Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. And I was just healed today on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. God is good. We've had tragedies today, but the hurricane force winds of the Hawthorne Experience saved me and continue to do so, making an imprint on this town in Tucson. Kenny, Jonah, Will, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Good to finally be here. Yeah.
You know, I wanted to ask you, Jonah, let me ask you. It's not easy to just step in with two brothers. The Madsen two are dear friends of mine. I don't know if you know who those cats are. Guitar, drums from San Diego, badasses, total fucking badasses. But they are in each other's minds. How did you become comfortable? How did you connect with the brothers?
Well, initially, a mutual friend just lived with Will and then just said one day, like, hey, you have a bass, right? I said, yeah, I got it like a month ago. And he said, oh, you should go jam with him. And I was like, I don't know how the hell to do that. And so I came over here, and then we jammed. We wrote like a song, our first jam that we had together. That was over, 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
As for working with these two fools, I mean, sometimes it's like very much like I can tell they have the hive mind where they kind of come together and they think very similar things where I might have a differing opinion. But honestly, what's so badass about working with these guys is that they always go out of their way where like we all have veto power when it comes to that stuff, including myself, which is really badass. So that's how
What's the hive? Because you're not like on the bandstand. You know, that's the best thing about the conversation on the bandstand is that you can argue, you can get stuff out of your system, all right? But like, do they have like, is it eye contact or is it totally just like frequency wise, that hive mentality? You can feel that.
Yeah, for sure. But honestly, at this point, I've kind of tuned myself into it in the sense. I mean, I've like.
Dude, you're part of the organism.
Yeah, I mean, I've exclusively jammed with these guys for over 2 years now. So I mean, at this point, it kind of just works. Like we kind of just have a little language of like eyebrows and winks and smiles.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you also, like, you're telling me that you had a bass, but you didn't know how to jam, or you were just fucking around?
I didn't know how to jam at all. No,
so, I mean, what's your? I mean, you had a couple lessons, maybe, or you totally skiffle player? Like what?
I played guitar before a little bit. I only really learned covers and stuff. I didn't really know jack shit besides that. But
is it easier to coalesce in a group in blues-based music, or can you go to the heavens and play fusion as well? And you don't even know. I mean, there's no terms. I hate genres in music. But what I'm saying is, like, I've listened to the tunes. It's a power trio, right? It's fucking groovy. There's elements of totally right down the middle of the country, right there. Southern roots, but also Texas as well. But there's also a West Coast vibe. I mean, have you reached your? Is there more vocabulary for you to learn, or is it just?
Well, certainly more to learn, 100%. I mean, when it comes to something like theory, like I don't think that really any of us are really well versed in it. I mean, it's kind of all.
That's why I love you guys, dude. I'm not a musician, Daddy. It's like I'm a fucking humanist, dude.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about catching a vibe. Like I don't know half of the notes on my fretboard, but goddamn, I know how they sound.
Dude, this is savant. This is savant shit. Kenny, let me ask you a question, man.
Yeah.
Like when you go you record in that room. Or you've recorded a lot of the stuff. I mean, I listen to a lot of stuff on that you have available, and I just wanted you to talk about how you mic your drums when you record. Because the thing about modern music, even if cats are all hitting at the same time in the studio, producers feel compelled to mic the whole kit, and it takes away what I call good leakage or room sound. Because that's when the spirit gets going in the recording.
Yeah.
But how do you tune where do you like the mics on your drums?
Well, that's honestly more a question for him. He's the producer, kind of, genius mind behind all the recordings that we've done at home. He's done a lot of the research.
So he knows the sound that you're...
He knows the sound. He's done a lot of the research, and I kind of just trust with what he has to say.
We'll talk a little bit about your philosophy as it relates to the drummer, unbeknownst to... unlike common knowledge, the drummer is the leader of the band.
Yeah.
The drummer can pull back, push the tempo, all right? And I just, as a leader, I mean, and again, you're a diplomat, obviously, but what are the strongest qualities of leadership as the drummer?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting experience, because when we first started playing together, I kind of had in the back of my mind, because I started with guitar when I was 12 years old, and I kind of had in the back of my mind, okay, I can play the drums a bit. I'll play the drums, we'll find another drummer, and then I can be a guitarist. And then I kept playing. And once I finally got rid of that idea of, oh, this is not my permanent spot, and I like fell in love with the drums, that's when I kind of was able to start putting more into it and making my part more than just a stand-in part. And then, like you said, kind of pushing and pulling when we're jamming. I mean, for us, jamming totally impromptu is a pretty fresh thing.
It's relatively new.
Uh-huh.
I'm catching the crest of the wave right now.
No, yeah. No, so that's something that has been really fun for me to learn, because it's like we'll come in for our practice and we'll jam, and I really just have to remind myself, okay, I can't just sit here in this one groove for the whole time. I need to just try something. And sometimes it fails and sometimes it works, and then it works one more time the next time we jam, and kind of continually gets better and better. And
let me ask you, like at Chase, for instance, like the trust within the group, if you hit a clam or quote unquote make a mistake, does everybody go with you? I mean, that's the thing. There's no wrong notes. You put a chord on everything. I realize the drum doesn't have notes, but where's the trust in that aspect of it, where it's like that's actually the gateway to new vocabulary?
Yeah, and I agree. It's you can't learn anything new without failing at trying something.
It's the only time you grow.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, when we play our live shows, I'd say they're still pretty structured. We have like a plan, but we have these sections that we're like, okay, here we're gonna jam, and if I mess something up, it's like I know where we're going, so I'll find my way back there,
right.
And they're just waiting there, and it always works out, and it's always kind of like, okay. It's interesting though, because I really haven't been on the drums for too long, and
only a couple years maybe.
Yeah,
I love
maybe
it.
5 years.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
So it's something that I'm really learning, and like you said, I've heard 100 times, the drummer, without a good drummer, there's no good band, and initially I was like, oh man, this is a huge responsibility, but I've learned that like within my wheelhouse, when I find that place where I'm comfortable to hold that responsibility, it's an amazing feeling, and it's like, all right, this is I can do this thing so that they can do whatever they want on top of it, and it sounds good.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, brother. And I wanted you to just talk about growing up in your family, how significant, I mean, were you guys sort of the black sheep, or was it a musical family? Did you play music? Because that's kind of a dying thing now, musical families.
Yeah.
Did you come from a musical family?
So I was actually just thinking about this the other day, because in some ways I'm kind of surprised that Kenny and I ended up as musicians, because short answer, no.
Yeah.
Like, neither of our parents are musicians. In fact, there's only one relative we have that we know of that she plays piano. Outside of that, there's no musicians in our family. But I was thinking about this the other day. I was listening to a Billy Strings interview.
Yeah.
He was talking about the vinyls that his dad put on when he was a kid. And I remember Morrison Hotel, Electric Ladyland, some of those those classics from like the 60s and 70s.
That was in your
era.
folks' collection.
That was in my folks' collection, and it was actually from my dad's parents' collection as well. And I remember singing that stuff when I was a kid, and I remember this one thought I had one day in church, because we grew up going to church, and I remember thinking, like, I'm singing this song, I don't know what's coming next, but I keep singing the right part.
Yeah, right.
And I sat with that for years. I was like, I'm not a musician though. I don't know. That's not my thing. And then I picked up a guitar one day and haven't put it down. And so I think maybe it was within me, but it's hard to find out exactly where it may have come from. It's kind of a puzzle.
I have to ask you about, like, being some cats that were sort of steeped in monotheistic religion, when you realize that you are a conduit, because that's what you're talking about. You're talking
Yeah.
about being a vessel for information. How have you learned to sort of control or tame your ego so that you can get out of your own way, so that information that you know, like you can't feel it, you don't know what's coming, but it's always the right thing.
Yeah.
That's you're a conduit for information coming through you from the heavens. So where's your how do you deal with your ego in order to clear yourself?
Yeah. So first of all, I appreciate the question a lot because it's coming from a place that I think
We all have
I'm
an
also
ego.
coming from. Yeah. Ego is a big thing. But I think I want to answer it kind of twofold. First, I've always had a spiritual connection. Now I grew up in the Christian church.
Sure.
My parents aren't big Christians, but they took us to church. They showed us that, and I connected through it.
How can you share an experience of connecting with Source
Yeah, totally.
outside of music? I mean, early on because everybody has God within them.
Yeah, when I was in sophomore year of high school, I just, it was kind of a big moment. I was saved. I felt this presence of God, and I felt that I knew what was going on a little bit, even though I still don't. But I don't question that to this day because I know it was an impactful part of my journey. But then, so you talk about being a conduit and having the ego, and I think like, for whatever reason, I've been open to the idea of God and spirituality since I was a young guy, and so I've never like discounted those ideas, and personally I think a lot about myself, and I try to connect on the daily with God, and so I've come to, and music has been this other spiritual force that the people who kind of raised me would say like, don't play that psychedelic rock music, it's from the devil. But I've found this like crossroads is the wrong term. I found this point where they intersect.
How? Explain. This is so important.
Because the stuff that people talk about that they get from a show or when some conduit is channeling that energy. We all know what I'm talking about. It's the same thing people describe in the church, and I think we're all a little too small to point to like, oh yeah, it's coming from here, it's coming from there. It's coming from somewhere, and I know I can feel it when we jam, when we put ourselves. You mentioned, to go back to the ego. Sorry, I got a lot of thoughts on this.
I love it, dude. I
The
fucking love it,
ego
dude.
is like the one telling you like to not let go and to control your situation.
Exactly. You're nailing it, dude.
Yeah.
This is about liberation. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes in the church, they want to keep it very square.
Yeah.
And they don't want the devil's music around.
No,
because
it's true.
you start to let the body dance.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. David danced in the Bible,
Exactly.
man.
Well, and when you read the Bible too, like I'm a believer in the Bible still today, and I think a lot of the stories that are told are misconstrued. I think those, Jesus' disciples, like they were hippies. They were
Dude,
out.
Jake Feinberg, dude.
Yeah,
And
they were Jake Feinberg,
This is
exactly.
totally Jake Feinberg, dude.
They were eating locusts and honey, and
I mean, just having a ball,
channeling
man.
Yeah.
Barefoot and just a barefoot boy.
But tapping into life.
Yeah.
And I think
Exactly.
there's
The life force.
Yeah, I think there is a problem. Like, I don't want to specifically point fingers at any churches.
It's not about that, man. It's about you.
But I think people like to control other people, and I think at a certain point the answer is like in here and not necessarily down the street at whatever place you're going to. So I don't know.
It's not about punching the clock. It's not
Yeah.
about showing up because that you're supposed to.
Yeah.
It's about when you found your purpose in life, healing people. And in your
true.
case, it's on the bandstand.
And
Yeah.
lastly, I'll say that it wasn't until I started playing music and putting myself in a vulnerable position, whether that's jamming and not wanting to mess up, or whether that's going on stage and saying, shit, I might, I might fail and people might laugh at me. It's through that I've actually been able to, that's the first thing in my life where I've been able to do and feel closer to the Spirit.
Right, because what you're doing is taking what you do seriously, but you're not taking yourself that seriously.
Yeah,
and that's the point. Control comes from ego, people taking themselves too seriously, thinking that they are somehow dominant, when in fact the musical conversation is a completely shared experience. Kenny, I have to ask you something, man. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can talk, like, what was the gravitational force, spiritual force that pulled you guys from a pretty, like, secure existence, going to school here? I don't know exactly what you were majoring in, but then there was this gale force spiritual move where it was like, no, we're gonna play music. Mm-hmm. What was the catalyst for that?
Well, I would say the catalyst came before we were even in Tucson. I mean, I kind of remember, like, from a young age, always admiring musicians, kind of like, you know, the record collection. We always had this great music around, and there was always a draw. And then one day I was like, okay, I'll learn how to play an instrument. I would honestly say that it's not one instance, it's constantly happening, because I find myself in situations where I'm, you know, going because it's what you're supposed to do, going to this or going to that, and you know, checking the boxes, but I'm always, you know, always up in my head. It's like, I don't want to be
I
here.
love it, dude.
Yeah, but it's yeah.
When you got here, though, with your brother, it gave you permission to pursue this calling.
Exactly, and I never ended up finishing high school in Austin, and I was working retail, and then I had been playing guitar for a while. He had picked it up when he moved out here. We kind of had this band going. He was recording a lot of the stuff that's out completely by his own in here, and I was kind of removed from it. And my parents were like, you know, saying, okay, what do you want to do? And I ended up deciding to go to trade school, and they were generous enough to help me get out here and help me get to school. And in my head, that was kind of like, okay, I'm going to go to trade school because that's the vehicle, that's the decision that's going to get me here and get me to a place where I can have the time to work on the band. And then, I mean, shortly after, he became a part of it, and it's just, but I guess the specific question, yeah, that, like, the one moment I would say is kind of continuous.
And you're still in the trade.
I'm not anymore. I'm just working.
Dude, I love this,
and doing this, yeah.
All right, I'm going to ask each of you, Joe, and I'll start with you. You know, what is your definition of success? And what I mean by that is, like Jake Feinberg's definition of success is striving for excellence in my true nature, in what I do, and cutting above the morass of what any other broadcast journalist is doing in the world. That is success. It has nothing to do with monetization, punching the clock, taking the vacation, doing this and that. I know where I stand. What is your concept? What is your definition of success at this point in your life?
When it comes to something like success, I mean, I've never really seen something with monetary value or having a bunch of doohickeys in my house as success, you know?
But yet you were probably surrounded by that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I see success more as I have a list of things that I want to be fulfilled. And at this point, I feel successful. You know what I mean? Because I've got people that care about me. I've got a badass band. And I live every day having fun. And honestly, at that point, that's success. But honestly, another way that you could put it is success is the ability to get out of your comfort zone. Because I wouldn't be here. Like I said, I did not know how to jam way outside of my comfort zone. And then so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try it anyway. And I mean, look where we are now. You know.
Will, for people that are going to see this in 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years, or long after we've left this planet, what are you striving? What makes? I think that's the point. Is that the Jake Feinberg Show? There's only one. It's one of a kind. There's nothing else like it, really. Okay, for better or for worse. What makes you guys cut above what every other band or what are you trying to get to? What makes you unique?
That's a great question.
And if you don't know, it's okay because it's the forever journey.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's almost, you guys are still like, you're beyond the embryo. It's been birthed,
Right.
but you're still just a little baby.
At this point, it has become apparent to me that this is a spiritual quest.
Yes. Yes.
And that's answer number one. Like, because
What does
we
that
would've-
mean?
We would have quit already if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because we've been. I mean, it's not easy to face. Not that we've faced a ton of scrutiny or anything, but you know, when you're fresh, and
Dude, give
you
me a
kinda
break,
suck
man.
a little bit. Yeah, it's like
Very established bands that have been road dogging it for 10 years are still doing it
Yeah.
because it's a spiritual quest.
there's no other external motivator that's gonna make you do this. Like that wouldn't make sense. So yeah, it's a spiritual quest, and then, I mean, secondary to that, because I think I've recognized that that's what's driving me forward. But I certainly have goals for this band that, you know, I want this band to be heard by a lot of people. And I haven't quite figured out why I want that. I can't tell, you know, maybe it's the humanistic side of me that wants, you know, attention and adoration. I think, if I'm being honest with myself, that's in there. Maybe it's tied to the fact that I believe in it so much that by proxy I need other people to hear it. But
Or how
at
about
the
this? I
same
mean,
time, yeah.
I mean, like, for me, the healers, the authentic healers, give everything away. They give away the information. Obviously, there's so many things. It would take another hour to talk about the criminality of how musicians are treated, how you have to wear 8 hats. You have to sing for your supper. But yet you're not doing the trade. You are singing for your supper being a musician, Kenny. And it's like, do you think that, like, instrumentally there's room for expansion? Maybe keyboard could it become bigger? Where I mean, what I'm getting at is, like, in jazz, for instance. And again, you're not playing standards, you're not playing the Great American Songbook, but there's this, like, formula trip. You know, first the sax player, and then the guitar player, and then the drummer. You know, it's like, I don't want to say predictable, but you guys are not predictable, and you're coming from the street school. So, like, what? Just give me the essence of what makes it unique. I mean, more than you just playing shirtless and having a ball.
Yeah.
Because that was the sickest. Dude, there was just, I mean, that was the most psychedelicized. And the tunes are fucking great, and the messages are great. I think that's the other thing. You guys have a story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just kind of like, it's just all of our heads put together, and something is going to come of it. We don't know what it is. And like you say, or is there room for other people? Like, you know, of course, there's always room for more or this or that. And, like, you know, I thought, it'd be great to have a keys player, but that'll come when it comes, if it comes.
Right.
And, you know, it's just like, I think one of the lessons we've learned is we've tried to go into writing music from the perspective of, let's write something like this or like that, and it never produces anything. The way we write our best music is we come into the jam space and we're like, okay, let's mess around, let's jam, and then we'll fall into something and we'll all look up and be like, okay, this is it. And it's kind of just like the unpredictability of it is what's so exciting about it. And
It's called instantaneous spontaneity and creation in the moment, which is what we're doing. Just before I let you guys go, for your folks, I'm always curious about this. They may not understand your path, but do they respect it?
Yeah, and I think you said at one point, like, raised by, you know, people, this is the devil's music. I think that's more our grandparents.
Well, that was from, like.
Hey, let me be very clear. This goes
Yeah.
back to the house. I've interviewed 2,000 cats,
Yeah.
guys that are much older than your parents, and they weren't allowed to play the devil. I mean, I know what he's getting at. The point is that it's.
Yeah.
But I also.
You should clarify. Though,
Clarify, yeah,
our
please.
Our parents have always.
Yeah.
enabled
So
us
they
towards us.
they respect your path.
They
They
do.
do, but they're. I was referring to like, we went to a Christian school.
Dude,
where
you don't
had
need to
wear
preface
uniforms.
nothing, man. This
Yeah.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't embrace it. Let's put it that way, okay?
Right, and some of those people would say that, but I have to clarify. Our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are our number one fans.
They embrace it and
it's a
support
blessing,
it
yeah.
and everything.
Jonah, you too?
Yeah, absolutely. No, my dad was a musician when he was.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, like when I told my parents, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm playing this band. It's like a fun thing." And they're flying out here to come and see us. And like my mom bought me my bass because she was just like the first couple of months we were doing it, she was so hyped up.
Was he like in a cover band? He's an original
He was
band?
in a cover band.
They are so jacked up because you're in an original fucking they're groupies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah, but no, they just got so hyped up as soon as I started doing it. And so like my mom sends me her Spotify Wrapped every year. It's like, "Oh, it's you guys again, number one." And so it's like, yeah, that's awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
I just want to say, I mean, I spent a long time on the road. Sometimes I do travel, although it's really expensive to see my friends on the road now. And I've been developing and coalescing this farm system here, and the Hawthorne Experience is the real deal. And it is such an honor that I'm going to be able to see you guys keep growing. Like I said, there is no roadmap, so do what your instinct and intuition tells you every time. And thank you for being part of the program. You guys healed me today.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jake.
It's an honor.
Blast.
It's the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you later.